Good morning, people online. We will start in a couple of minutes. We are just installing ourselves in the room.
So, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the workshop of the Balancing Platforms Stakeholder Workshop for the European Balancing Platforms IGCC, MARI, PICASSO, and TERRE, kindly hosted by ENTSO-E. We have some people in the room and we have quite some people online, which will be a challenge for today's discussion, but I'm quite sure that we'll manage. My name is Ulf Kasper. I'm here for the Balancing Platforms and will guide us a bit through this meeting. But before we start with the agenda, maybe the colleagues from ENTSO-E can give us a brief introduction about the housekeeping rules so that we are well set up for today's meeting.
Indeed. So, good morning, everyone. So, we're going to be using Slido to ask questions for the presentation, specifically those who are online. So, please, you can join here, Slido here on the code. You see the code here on the screen and also the QR code. Just as a reminder, we're going to have the all the mics in mute, so please do not speak. And also the event will be recorded and posted on the website. The presentations have been already posted on the ENTSO website already, so you can check it already over there. So maybe we can start with the next.
Yes, thanks a lot. And we are in the welcome part and specifically with the agenda. So what are we going to do today? After a brief welcome and introduction, I will give you an overview on balancing. What is this all about? Maybe this is one of our lessons learned from last year, that we will provide some general updates and information at the very beginning. And later on, we will go through the balancing platforms platform by platform. So Vanessa will provide an update on TERRE, specifically project status and some statistics over the project's lifetime. For the MAVI project, for mFRR, Václav and myself will give an introduction, show the KPIs and the accession roadmap and the next steps. And for PICASSO and IGCC, Caspar and Dominic will give an overview on the project, the business process, and also the operational reporting. We will close this workshop around 12:30 with some Q&A and some closing remarks. If there are no imminent questions, I suggest to continue. What is balancing all about? And maybe this is a good overview. In the end, balancing is one of the fundamentals for good and reliable power systems, and it contributes to the overarching requirement that load, so consumption of electricity and generation, must always be equal. The underlying problem is that, of course, it's impossible to predict the consumption at every point in time, and also for generation there can be uncertainties. And this is why the TSOs procure dedicated services, the so-called balancing services, to ensure that some services are at hand which can make sure that there is this equilibrium at every point in time. These balancing services are basically it's basically power balancing, and the overall idea of a market-based procurement is to pay market participants if they are able. This would be the power part of the procurement, to provide balancing and pay an energy price if they actually do this. We will see on the next slide later on that there are different balancing services, but the overarching image that you usually have is that you really have a balance with consumption and production on both sides. And the system frequency is exactly 50 Hertz if the balance is in an equilibrium, while on the other hand, if the balance is if the consumption is bigger, the frequency is lower, and the production is bigger, the frequency is higher. Maybe let's have on the next slide a look at the different balancing services itself, or maybe here this is more for this distinction between balancing capacity procurement and balancing energy activation. In principle, we distinguish between frequency containment reserve, formerly known as primary control reserve, also known as FCR, which is very fast and stabilizes the system frequency itself, while other balancing services, basically automatic frequency restoration reserve, secondary control reserve, aFRR, and manually frequency restoration reserve or tertiary reserve, are usually degradingly slower and either controlled by a 4-second cycle or activated every 15 minutes, while restoration reserve or RR is the reserve with the longest lead time. It is important to keep in mind that there is a distinction between the procurement of balancing capacity, which is basically the possibility to provide balancing services, and balancing energy. This is the provision of balancing itself. Why do we point this out here? Because all the balancing platforms we will report about today focus on balancing energy. So basically the balancing energy activation. If we go for the next slide, I think we get some more insights on that. You see here the different balancing services in different colors. So frequency containment reserve, the quickest one, then aFRR, mFRR, and RR. And basically in the charts below, you get an impression when and how they are used to counteract some frequency deviation. This is what you see in the middle part, and in the lower part you have an overview on how the balancing energy is actually activated. So obviously frequency containment reserve is the quickest one and activated first, but quickly replaced by aFRR, afterwards by mFRR, and finally by RR. It's fair to keep in mind that this is of course an idealized case, because usually we have more than one frequency deviation at one point in time. So usually you have this multiple times very closely to each other. There is one more thing that we would like to highlight on this slide, and this is on the bottom part. Frequency restoration reserve has always been provided within the entire synchronous area jointly. So there is just one frequency, and frequency containment reserve is really focusing on frequency control. It is activated jointly anyhow, while in the past aFRR, mFRR, and RR have been activated by the affected TSOs or the affected countries locally, so within their load frequency control area or in their own country if there are several TSOs in a country. This is a viable approach, but introducing the balancing platforms enabled us to change this and to make it possible that this activation of balancing energy can happen cross-border and basically be much more economically efficient, as we will show in the upcoming presentations. Having this in mind, let's switch to the next slide. This gives us an overview on the left-hand side what is basically the vision behind the European balancing platforms, and I think that's the easy picture. It's basically the idea that if it's economically feasible and if there's enough cross-zonal capacity at hand, of course, it should be possible to balance any imbalances on the Iberian Peninsula with bids from Finland or from Bulgaria if they are the most economic offers. This is the idea, and the underlying implementation on the right-hand side, you see slightly more complex, is basically dedicated IT implementation and describes what or shows what TSO would describe as a so-called TSO model. So basically, our intention always has been to keep the interaction between the providers, the balancing service providers, the BSPs, and the TSOs on a national level untouched, to have their only limited amount of changes, while later on the interaction with the balancing platforms happens between the TSOs. And technically what you see in this chart is that the BSPs continue to submit their bids to the TSOs, and the TSOs forward these bids, their own demands for balancing, so basically their imbalance, as well as the available cross-zonal capacity, this is abbreviated with CZZ here, to the balancing platforms. And the balancing platforms consist of a mathematical function, the so-called activation optimization function, the AOF. There is some capacity management implemented, as well as some settlement function, because obviously whatever we do later on has also to be settled. And the activation optimization functions now just determine what is the most economic bid that should be activated, and is there enough cross-zonal capacity at hand. And based on that, it informs the TSOs again which bids to activate, and also some bids not to activate, obviously, how much cross-zonal capacity has to be used, and how to settle some amount of activated balancing energy. This is then received by the TSOs, and especially for activation purposes, of course, forwarded also to the BSPs. And this cycle continues and continues, and you will see later on also in the platform results that we run the optimization behind here as often as there are activation possibilities. So every quarter hour, basically, for the MARI platform, for instance, or for the PICASSO platform, every 4 seconds. With this in mind, I think we can switch to the next slide, which is a bit what have TSOs done for harmonization and integration of the European balancing platforms. Basically, we have started our journey quite some time ago with some voluntary cooperations, but by establishing the guideline electricity balancing some years ago, we went to an approach where we could make this cooperation on the one hand a bit more formalized, and on the other hand also a mandatory approach, ensuring that the different corporations could grow. I already told you that the overarching aim is to have the cheapest activation and in the end have some welfare maximization. This is also what we will see in the platform results. The costs of the TSOs, but also on increasing the overall economic welfare, so the economic surplus, which is basically the sum of consumer rent, producer rent, and congestion income. The platforms have required, and this is also why it took some time, quite some standardization amongst the balancing products, because although the concepts of FCR, aFRR, and mFRR are rather similar since many years, the devil is in the detail, and we have managed here to harmonize these products to make the platforms happen and managed in the recent years, and this will also be touched in the upcoming presentations, that quite some TSOs already connected to the platform, but we also do recognize that some TSOs still have to connect soon to make the platform fully, not fully functional. They are already functional, but to get their full potential. One last thing, which is important to keep in mind and also reflects one of the questions we have received last year, the balancing platforms are, as I already said, balancing energy platforms, and based on that, they use the remaining cross-zonal capacity available after all intraday markets. So basically, there's no cross-zonal capacity allocated explicitly for balancing energy at this point in time, but we only use what we also call the leftover capacities. So no exchange from the intraday markets for scheduled energy is limited here. It's just all about remaining cross-zonal capacities. I suggest we continue with the next slide, and this is where I may, although we will have some detailed analysis, of course, in the presentation, already share with you the overarching high-level results of the balancing platforms. Basically, what you see here is the 4 platforms we are focusing on today: IGCC, PICASSO, MARI, and TERRE. And in the dedicated darkest colors, you see who has already joined the platform. You will have something detailed on this later in the presentation. This is why I don't name the countries. But I want to especially put your focus on the last row of the table, which is the economic surplus we have achieved so far in 2020-25. And here we are basically seeing that significant amount of economic surplus is already facilitated by the IGCC, so the imbalance netting, avoiding counter activations of aFRR. We are around of 313 million euros in the first 2 quarters. PICASSO provides an additional economic surplus of 351 million euros until end of July, while the MARI platform has enabled an economic surplus of around about 82 million euros until September, and the TERRE platform has achieved an economic surplus of 284 million euros until end of September. Keep in mind, this is not just TSO savings. Then in this case, you could argue somebody earns less and we just save money. This is economic surplus, meaning social welfare consisting of consumer rent, producer rent, and the congestion income. All in all, and maybe just to give it in a perspective, this is not on the slide, but last year the overall savings of the balancing platforms have been around 1.4 billion euros, and we are quite optimistic that we will exceed this value this year. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Maybe there's some questions in the chat, but maybe take this at the very end. I suggest to continue with the slides so far, and this may be indeed a good point to reach to go for the questions, because we reached the end of the introductory part and would now be able to switch to the first balancing platform. But maybe starting with the questions in the room, are there any questions regarding the overarching part, or should we switch to the questions posted on Slido already?
So maybe, Ulf, you can answer, how do you calculate this surplus, and do these EU-wide surpluses take into account the losses generated in the different countries? That's the question from the chat. Thank you.
So basically, the economic surplus is calculated by an approach where we compare the actual market result with a market result that would have happened without exchange of balancing energy. So basically, the actual market result is compared to a so-called virtual market result, assuming that no balancing energy could have been exchanged. We actually also have a scientific publication on that if somebody is specifically interested in the details. This analysis does not consider, but this is actually something which is neither there for the actual market result nor for the market result, the virtual one. We do not consider grid losses or something like this here, but assume that this is indeed in the range of the normal grid losses which would have occurred anyhow.
There are some more questions in our Teams. Please submit those questions in a Slido, so then they can be worked out in an equal way for everyone. So repeat one more time in Slido. At the beginning, there has been a code. I think I'm not sure whether in a chat the Slido link has been shared, but if not, it will be shared soon. And now we will move to the TERRE part, and I will hand over the word to Vanessa with TERRE, and she will guide us through. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vaclav. So I'm Vanessa Brun. I work for RTE, and I will be the chair for TERRE project until the end of the project. So I'm going to be the last one. I will guide you today through the slides. So the idea today is to maybe remind you a little bit what is the context of the end of the TERRE project. We had two extensive workshop last year to explain a little bit how it was decided together with TSO and NRAs. So if we had maybe more precise question, we can refer to this workshop. But I will give some highlights, I would say. Then I will give you more details regarding the planning for the end of the project, the impact and the consequences for TSO. I see that I have already received a lot of questions regarding how TSO will handle the end of TERRE, and also some statistics over the project lifetime. Here we wanted to remind a little bit the history of TERRE. So the TERRE project was approved in 2016 by ENTSO-E before the entry into force of EBGL. So it was the very first balancing project. It was a project with some TSOs, SHEPS, National Grid, PSE, Red Electrica, REN, RT, Swissgrid, and TERRE. We write down the implementation framework in 2019 after the entry into force of EBGL, and we go live. The platform go live in January 2020 with the connection of SHEPS. So SHEPS run in an isolated mode for the whole period they were connected, since PSE never connected to TERRE. Then in March 2020, Red Electrica joined the platforms, and with the connection of REN, we had the first cross-border exchanges of balancing energy in TERRE. Then followed Swissgrid and RT end of 2020. TERRE was the latest to join. In 2022, we received the notice exit of National Grid due to the Brexit. In 2023, we launched a discussion regarding the modification of the design of the platforms. TERRE had the opportunity to increase the number of gates. Today, it's still 24 gates clearing. Then, with the increasing of the number of gates for XBID, we had to also change the design of the platform. So we had been discussing it for some times, but in 2023, we decided to launch a consultation. In the meantime, we received the information that the new electricity market design will enter into force, and with the aim to reduce the gate closure time for cross-border intraday exchanges, that will put an end at the end of the ERR process. So the TERRE project faced a difficult situation. On one hand, we had to change the design of the platform to remain compatible with XBID, and on the other hand, we had the new regulation which entered into force in January 2026. So we discussed with the TSO and NRA and decided to close the project. I will give you more details in the following slide. But then, since we decided to close the project and that ERR process is a voluntary process, some TSO already decided to disconnect from the platform in 2024. So it was the case for SHEPS and TERRE in 2024. And in 2025, by the end of the year, we will have the end of the operation in TERRE with the disconnection of Swissgrid, RT, Red Electrica, and REN. And the project will close in 2026. We need to decommission the platform, close the invoices, and so on. So we have here the member of the project, former board member and still operational member. So today in operation we have RTE, REN, Red Electrica, and Swissgrid. SHEPS, TERRE, and PSE remained former member and participating to the project to make decision regarding the decommissioning. We also have some observers and some project members We had them in order to prepare for the MARI platform and then some project with the Nordics. Go to the next slide. So I already introduced the topic. I'm not good in following slides, too chatty with slides. So as I said, why we end the project? We had, on one hand, the new electricity market design reform, which will enter into force in January 2026, which make the area process impossible to be applied anymore. So even though some TSO will request some derogation and already requested, were granted some derogation to implement this new gate closure time, not in 2026, but later on. Still, we had this uncertainty regarding the duration of the project. On the other hand, as I said, we had to increase the number of delegates for TERRE to remain compatible with the increase of number of delegates for the intraday market, so planning 2026. So we had to decide whether we want to change the design of the platform for the 3 coming years, so between January 2026 and January 2029. That's why we run a consultation asking for market participants if they see some benefits to do that. And the main feedbacks we got is that if we change the design of TERRE, the error product would be too similar to the mFRR product, because the only difference is with the option we would have put in place would be the 96.8 in TERRE will have the same duration period but different FAT. And we were also expecting a loss of liquidity in TERRE. Also, from an operational point of view, for some TSO, it was a priority to focus on connection of MARI and PICASSO. So we had a lot of discussion between TERRE TSO and also NRA, and we decided to keep on using the platform as far as possible, so until end of 2026. But to close the project in order to prioritize for MARI and PICASSO so we shared this official decision last year in December 2024 in a public letter published on the ENTSO-E website you can find. And we've been discussing it with our regulators, NRA is the regulators, and they also published a legal assessment what are the impact of ending TERRE. It's also available publicly. So some planning for the end of the project. I don't know if we already shared that this so precise. So we aim at terminate the operation of the platform by the end of 2025, and then the beginning of 2026 will be dedicated to close properly the project. So we will have the disconnection of RT and Swissgrid 17th of December. And REN and Relatica will keep on using TERRE until the end of the year. Afterwards, we will, I can see there, so I will look at my computer. We need some time to retrieve the data because we will save the data, the archives of TERRE on each TSO. Each TSO we save the data. We will decommission the platform. Of course, we have to do some decommissioning to other, because TERRE is connected to the transparency platform, for example. We have to close the settlement of the platform, so it will take time in case we need to correct some things. We will keep some data available in order to prepare the latest report for TERRE. So you will find the latest operational KPI in the ENTSO-E reports, balancing market, UBI cost reporting. And then we will really close the project somewhere in March. So end of the operation, end of 2025, but TSO will continue to work in order to close properly the project until March 2026. Here are the legal impact of the ending of TERRE. So, as stipulated by the regulators of TERRE in their position paper, you can find on ENTSO-E website. The end of TERRE had a direct consequence on the user IR product for TERRE TSO. So with the end of TERRE, it will not be longer feasible for European IR TSO to exchange IR standard products under these new circumstances. And then TSO member of this TERRE project will have to stop to perform the reserve replacement process as defined in SOGL. And we, TSO, will have to replace the error process with alternative solutions. To answer your question, so we won't be allowed to use any more error process once disconnected from TERRE. I saw a lot of questions on that point. So the way TSO will cope with the end of TERRE will be managed at national level. So I can't give a TERRE position on that as chair. I think each TSO can provide their feedback if they wish. You can contact your TSO. I can maybe give you for RTE. We will introduce a definition of how we will complement the usage of the standard product once connected to MARI. We'll keep on using some specific product because we will have a limited liquidity on MARI. That's what we expected. So in order to be able to balance the system, we will keep on using specific product. It will be defined in our national terms and conditions, but that's for RTE. Then it's up to each TSO to find a solution with their NRAs. From an operational impact, that's so the end of TERRE will have to be at national level. And for some TSO, the liquidity which was in TERRE will move to MARI. For some other TSO, it won't be the case. So it's really something that will have to be followed at national level, not at European level for that. But we expect, yes, some decrease of liquidity and some operational impact each TSO will have to deal with. And here we wanted to give you some statistics over the project lifetime. So over this existence, TERRE platform provided important financial benefits, even in 2025, where we have a limited amount of TSO connected to the platform. We see some variation over the years. This, as explained by Ulf, this benefits is computed through consumer producer and congestion incomes. So it depends on data such as activated bids and prices. So the main difference is between the beginning of the project, benefits coming from the beginning of the project and the end of the project, where the prices we observed some quite, if I'm not mistaken, high prices in the beginning of the project. Now we have few incident prices on TERRE. We observed an average of 47 million per month of savings since 2021. And as I said, 2021 was a was an exceptional year and with the highest monthly results recorded this year. But still, in 2025, we still had some benefits even with only 4 TSO connected to the platform. That's also why we decided to proceed as we propose, to keep TERRE alive at least until end of 2025, because we see some benefits in doing that. Here we see we propose to display the activation volumes. So it's part of the explanation of the socioeconomic welfare. An interesting fact is the shift between what is activated on the downward side, on the downward for the downward offers and upward offers. We see that in the beginning of the project, the volume were higher in the positive direction, while at the end it's more important in the negative direction. I think it's a tendency we see in Europe anyway. And the activation were globally important during the lifetime of the project, with an average monthly activation of 225 gigawatts for the downward activation and 258 gigawatts in the positive direction. So in average, almost the same, but with a shift in the tendency over the years. I think that's it.
So any questions here from audience?
The question? Okay.
Hello. Then welcome. Thank you, and welcome to the MARI segment. Give me just a second. I will turn on the camera. Now you got it with the full glory. So one more time, thank you and welcome to the MARI segment of today's workshop. For interaction, MARI is the European platform for mFRR energy balancing, designed to enhance system security and market efficiency through the cross-border cooperation. Since the go-live, we gained valuable operational experience, and today we will share the key performance insights and lessons learned. We'll also have a look ahead at the accession roadmap and next steps to ensure the full participation and continued improvement. Your engagement is crucial, so as we shape the future of balancing in Europe. So let's begin with a brief introduction before diving into KPIs and the roadmap. So that's it. Here you have seen it already, but repeating it's always good. So balancing processes are essential to contain and restore system frequency when imbalances occur, as it happens. Frequency Containment Reserve, FCR, is activated in a distributed manner across the entire synchronous area that has been already mentioned by Ulf before, while each load frequency control, LFC, area is responsible for restoring its own balance through the aFRR, mFRR, and RR till the end of this year with RR. The EBGL mandates the implementation of balancing platforms for cross-border activation of those products, enabling cooperation beyond national borders, the European cooperation. Operating these platforms ensures cost-effective restoration of imbalances and strengthens the system security across the Europe. So that's about that. I don't see any hands raised. We can go to the next slide. That's about the MARI. So MARI was established in 2017 as a foundation for the European mFRR platform. That's the project. Today, 29 TSOs from 26 countries are part of the project, with CREOS as a non-operational member, although participating to some extent through the German Amprin. After the dry run in July 22, a technical go-live in September 22 was followed, and accession have steadily progressed, starting with CHEPS and German TSOs in 2022, followed by APG in 23, and several others, including Baltics, Portugal, Spain, Slovakia, and Belgium in the course of 24 and 25. The next expected accession is Standard Netherlands later this year, December. That's for the introduction. I think we can go to the next one. Here, this is essentially a different drawing from what has been shown by Ulf, but this is applicable to all balancing platforms. So for a bit of an introduction also, MARI is a platform that is built on Libra solution originally, developed for TERRE, then reused partially for MARI. It combines two core components, the Libra data management system, which handles the communication, data exchange, and archiving, and the AOF, algorithm optimization function, so AOF optimization module, which clears the balancing demands against BSP's bits and calculates the cross-border marginal price, so-called CBMP. TSOs forward the products and communicate their demands and available cross-border capacities. Then the platform optimizes activations, communicates accepted bits and prices, calculates the commercial flows, and sends the resulting schedules and remaining ATCs, available transmission capacities, back to TSOs and capacity management module where applicable. This is it. Also, the results are communicated to the transparency, and then the settlement is done alongside with that. This is for the interaction and how essentially all balancing platforms works. The bits are collected at TSO level, sent to the platform to create a common merit order list. Then after the demand cleared, send the results to TSOs and to the transparency, and then TSOs transmit the information to BSPs to provide the balancing energy. So that's that. That's for this part. If we can get the key characteristics of MARI or mFRR according to the guideline on electricity balancing. MARI supports two activation types, scheduled activation, SA, and direct activation, DA. Scheduled activation occurs at fixed 15 minutes intervals with request optimized together in one run, resulting in a single uniform price per interval and uncongested area. Direct activation can be triggered anytime within the quarter hour and lasts until the end of the next interval, next quarter hour. Each direct activation request is optimized separately, so the prices can vary and are often higher than SA, than scheduled activation. That's for just to clear things. For scheduled activation, all participants share the same price share the price per uncongested area, of course. While direct activation prices differ per request. That's just to be clear. Should you have a further need for information, please dive into MARI activation optimization function description published in October 2023. Or in general, you can also reach and check the MARI website and ENTSO-E web pages. That's it. Now we get to the MARI high-level plan for this year and the coming 2 years. In 2025 to 27, MARI focus on supporting TSOs accession and continuous platform development. The key priorities include the release of MARI platform version 7.4, that's for this year, data quality improvements, and implementing EBGL Article 60.3, the list of data. By 2026, efforts will center on further platform enhancement, development, perhaps on energy community TSOs accession, and evaluating the impact of scheduled counter activations and bit rejections in the algorithm optimization function. For the 2027, the plan includes the monitoring and automatic reporting under the high prices mitigation measure balancing energy prices There is a typo. We missed the P there, but forgive us, please, for this typo. To ensuring compliance and transparency. All right, so that's about the high level plan of Mari. And now I will hand over back to Ulf for operational experience and KPIs.
Okay, thanks a lot. So let's dive into the operational results and specifically the key performance indicators which have been identified so far. The reporting period we are focusing on today is Q1 to Q3 this year, so from January the 1st until September the 30th of 2025. The analysis we will share today focuses on quite some questions or items which are listed here. We will first look at the mFRR requested and activated via Mari. So basically, this gives you answers to the question which country requests and which country activates actually mFRR. And maybe also the underlying question here, what are the changes after the recent accessions this year? Then we go for the mFRR demand per country. So basically, to which extent are the direct and the scheduled activations used? And are there again changes after the recent accessions? We will have a look at the mFRR prices. I think this was a dedicated request from the last annual stakeholder workshop to focus more on this. And we try also to provide this per country. You will see later on. And we will have an overview on this submitted and this selected, in the end, activated mFRR bids and prices. And this basically should provide you with an overview how much bids are offered at which price levels. And last but not least, the overview on the Mari economic surplus. So the economic benefits resulting from Mari, and again, this is not for TSOs, it's economic surplus, social welfare for the community. Having that said, let's dive into it and go for the next slide, please. This slide here shows you now the mFRR requested and activated via Mari. The upper part shows the positive or upward mFRR energy, and the lower part shows the downward mFRR energy. You see the different countries from left to right, as described: Spain, Portugal, Belgium, Germany, Austria, Czechia, Slovakia, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, all the countries which have already joined. And by color, you see a distinction between the satisfied scheduled activation demand, the satisfied direct activation demand, and also unsatisfied demand, and specifically a distinction between, because this was also one of the questions we have received upfront, unsatisfied price elastic scheduled activation demand and unsatisfied price elastic scheduled activation demand. And you also see later on the actually activated bids. So what can you get from these graphs? There are several things. Maybe the first one, as you see, two bars per country and direction. The left bar is always the demand, and the right bar is the actual activation. So basically, if the right bar of a country is bigger than the left bar, the country is basically a net exporter, and if the left bar is higher than the right bar, the country is basically a net importer. So just looking at this as an exemplary example, Spain is obviously a net exporter of mFRR, and most of it goes to Portugal, which is a net importer. But you can also recognize more from this graph, because basically, at least from the scale that we have chosen, so that you can see everything, there's hardly any unsatisfied scheduled activated demand, neither price elastic nor inelastic. This was one of the questions, and basically this concept is specifically applied in Czechia. And as you see here, and maybe there's the third thing that you can learn from the graphs, in comparison to the Baltic TSOs on the very right-hand side and the Iberian TSOs on the very left-hand side, hardly any mFRR with regards to the volumes is used in the middle part of MARI, so to say. So MARI is more or less at this moment three island operation, and the middle part has a far lower mFRR activation. This also implies, and we will see this on the next slide, that with the accession of the Iberian and the Baltic TSOs, the amount of activations and how MARI is used has significantly changed. Maybe having this in mind, let's go for the next slide, which now goes dedicated for the demand itself, and you see a very similar picture. And it's not the volumes, it's the number of demand. Let's keep this in mind, because previously you have had the volumes, but this picture now, again with the distinction between upwards and downwards demands and countries, provides you an overview how often is mFRR used, and basically you see that most of the demands are price inelastic. As I already said, it's only applied in Czechia, the price elastic scheduled activation demand, and most activations are scheduled activated. It's fair to say that there are direct activations, specifically in Spain, Portugal, and Lithuania, and there are also some in the center part. But with regards to the overall amounts, I think you get also from this slide a good impression that the way how we use or how often we use mFRR on the platform has significantly changed. Or putting it in a nutshell, we have an almost continuous mFRR activation now, thanks to the Iberian and Baltic TSOs. And almost continuous, what does this mean? We have around about 10,000 submissions demands, which corresponds around about 1/3 of the market time units. And it's predominantly price inelastic and scheduled activated. We can dive further in this on the next slide, which is now trying to provide you an overview on the prices. And this slide is prices per month. The next one later on will be prices per country. Why do we analyze both? Because with this slide, we more look for overall seasonalities in the prices, while for in the next slide, it's more for regional specialities. I have to provide some explanation to the slides. In general, it's about box plots. It is on the left-hand side the positive mFRR, on the right-hand side the negative mFRR, and we have, for better readability, kept the plots at ±5,000 euros per megawatt hours. Higher prices do occur, but are rather limited. We call prices higher than 7,500 euros per megawatt hour so-called price incidents, and they do occur, but really rarely. I think around about 12 so far this year. So what can you get from the slides? The majority of the prices are smaller than 250 euros per megawatt hour. The average prices for mFRR are larger than 0, which means that only in rare situations TSO have to pay for negative mFRR activations. And you can still see that for positive mFRR, we have slightly higher prices and also more outliers, as previously said. Maybe it gets more interesting because you don't see a really clear seasonality here. You might think it's more with the outliers, but not with the center part. Maybe let's go for the next slide to look at it more from the country perspective, because there we will see something. And again, here left chart positive mFRR price, positive mFRR, right chart negative mFRR, and basically what you can see here. Specifically that for the Iberian countries, TSO with a high amount of mFRR activation tend to have lower prices, which is something what you can see especially in comparison to the German case, where it's a very limited amount of mFRR activation, and prices consequently tend to be significantly higher, as you can also see on this graph. We see on the very right-hand side of both graphs that from the Baltic country perspective, there are still quite some outliers. It's not you have a very narrow center part of the box, but many outliers which are clearly visible. And here we of course the Baltic TSOs and the Baltic NRAs are looking at that. But it is likely to be also related to the fact that the Baltic region at this point in time is not connected to other parts of the MARE platform. So it's basically in an island operation. Keeping this in mind, let's go for the next slide, which tries to look now at the submitted bits. We're not with the activated bits yet, it's just the submitted bits. And we have chosen here a representation which tries to compare the different years. So for each month that you see listed here, you have 3 bars in both directions. The upper bars are for positive mFRR, and the very left ones for 2023, the middle one for 2024, and the right one for 2025. And the lower bars are for negative mFRR. And what is important here is that you see the bars go for the left-hand side, the left-hand scale, which is the average volume of submitted bits, while the lines go for the right-hand side, which is the average price of the submitted bits. And what you can basically see here, and it goes in the same direction as I have already showed you on the last slide, that the bidding behavior per country really also is related to the amount of bits submitted, and of course also the amount of bits used by the TSOs. So what you can see in December last year, so basically you see really the volumes going up. This is when the Iberian TSOs had joined MARE, and this is also the point in time where the related prices went down. And this is basically, this trend continues also in 2025. Now with looking at the very right-hand bars, the ones in reddish color, we have upgoing volumes and prices on the average on a significantly lower level. What else can you see from this slide? And I'm trying to focus more a bit on the text on the left-hand side. You can also see that Elia joined us in May this year, where you have a slight increase of the volumes. We have the prices now putting a value on it stabilized of the submitted, not activated bits around 700 euros per megawatt hour. And also for the negative prices, it's about stabilized at minus 200 euros per megawatt hour. If we leave now the submitted bids and go more for the selected, so basically the activated bids, the representation is similar, but I think the most striking part is you don't see 2023 and 2024 anymore, or hardly. In December you can see it. This is not because no selection of bids has happened, but, and again contributing to I think the storyline that goes around this presentation all the time, how MARI is used has significantly changed this year. So basically putting numbers on it, when the Baltics joined us, the volumes activated via MARI increased by approximately the factor 20. And when the Iberian TSOs joined us, the positive mFRR activations increased by the factor 12 again. Or if I look at it for the negative part, then it's even easier. With the Baltics joining, it increased by the factor 50, and with the Iberians joining, it increased by the factor 20. So basically, we went from an activation of 1 gigawatt hour to an activation of more than 1,000 gigawatt hours so far. Maybe this is one of the key messages from the key performance indicators. There is in 2025 a significant change in MARI, as we have now TSOs on board who really proactively use mFRR. And of course, from a TSO perspective, we are excited if we manage in the next year to bridge the remaining gaps on the map, how this as a joint market can evolve. Keeping this in mind, let's even go further, which is the slide with a more detailed representation of the economic surplus. So the sum of all what I have presented you so far. Again, this is the comparison. We already had this in the very first Q&A part. Is the comparison between the actual market result and the result. How would it have been without exchange of balancing energy? And you see here now again for 3 years, 2023, 4, and 5 in these 3 bars, and for each country, how congestion income in red, consumer rent in yellow, and producer rent in green have contributed to the economic surplus. And the sum of it is basically this purple bar that you might see. And on the very right-hand side, we have put you the overall sum of the values. And what can you read from this? Let's have an exemplary look in Spain. And you might recall in Spain for 2025, there have been a next exporter due to MARI. Actually, the producer rent is positive and the consumer rent is negative. So as a tendency, consumers have paid slightly more. But this, if you look at Portugal on the very left-hand side, has contributed to the consumer rent in Portugal to be positive. So consumers in Portugal have saved money, while producer rent in Portugal is negative. Basically, producers have earned less due to imports. The good message here is, if you look at the very right-hand side, in 2020-25, for the first time, we have had not only positive consumer rent, which is somehow very desirable as we are all consumers, but we have also had a positive producer rent, and we have had as a sum also positive congestion income. We have a significant congestion income for the first time at all, because we have for the first time a significant amount of mFRR activated. And you see again here the overall the overall economic surplus is this 82 million euros that I already said. We can even make it higher if we look at additional satisfied demand, which could not have been satisfied if we had not had this cooperation. This occurs. And you end up then with a problem how to price this. And what you can do is you price this with the highest, the maximum price which is possible. But, and this is why it is a number difficult to interpret, we end up with an economic surplus if we would consider this of around 3.8 billion euros in this year, which is of course a great number. But keep in mind there the analysis of comparing, or the methodology of comparing actual market results with hypothetical market results might reach its limits. Having this said, I think I have prepared the ground. This is the very last slide. Sorry, that's one I forgot, which is the economic surplus per month. And it's no new values, but we don't go for country-based values, but we go for monthly aggregated values, and it again gives you the good overview that there's a change in 2025 in the use of the platform. And you see it all started already in October with the Baltics, and in December with Iberian TSOs joining last year. But in 2025, we really have this significant increase of economic surplus. Now I think I can hand over to Václav again.
Thank you for handing over, and thank you for the positive values from economic surplus and producer consumer rent. So now we are at the overview of the accession roadmap, which are provided to the wide public and on the ENTSO-E web pages. The accession roadmaps are published and available to market participants. For further details, TSOs and NRAs provide the information locally if you want to have a specific information about each TSO. We can perhaps go to the next slide where there is a more visually attractive demonstration of the previous table. Basically, the TSOs or countries, that's better because stakeholders might not be that familiar with the name of the TSOs, in operation are from west to the east. Portugal, Spain, France is sharing the available transmission capacity, so not being in operation, but on halfway, let's say. Belgium, Germany, Austria, Czechia, and Slovakia. The last one to access is Netherlands is expected to access MARI in December 25. That's the graphical representation of accession roadmap till the end of 25. That being said, we can move to the next slide where you can see the expectations for the next year. So France, again going from west to the east, France, Slovenia, Poland, Hungary, Bulgaria, Romania, and Greece are expected to access the next year if everything goes well. This might not be the case always, but that's the foreseen or the expectations. That being said, and not seeing any question or hands raised here physically, I think we can get to the summary and the outlook. So the recent accession of Baltic and Iberian TSO has been a major milestone, as mentioned, significantly increasing activated mFRR volumes. Mostly, at least for Spain, that's clear. They have a different activation strategy. They are so-called proactive TSO. They rather activate in advance than to be a reactive TSO. So that's the case for, let's say, Central Europe or Central Europe TSOs, where we are reactive. We react upon the situation, and it's needed to consider also size of the TSO and the aFRR or procured aFRR reserves. So that's for stakeholders to be considered, and perhaps partially address some of the questions I've seen before, which will be also the written answers will be addressed in written as well, and perhaps at the end of the meeting we will address them if there's a time verbally. but nevertheless, the written questions will be answered in written, as it's a habit for past 3-4 years. As far as I recall, here in balancing stakeholder workshops, always the questions are answered in written. So that's so significantly increased activity, activated energy and mFRR volumes from just a few gigawatt hours to hundreds, right? Like by the factor of hundreds. Yeah, so in 2025, Elia successfully joined the MARI, and we anticipate the Netherlands will follow before the end of the year in the December, if everything goes well. The voluntary ATC sharing by RTE has further enabled cross-border exchanges between Iberian Peninsula and Central Europe. So both sides are winning, and that reinforced market integration. From January to September, MARI delivered an economic surplus of 82 million, as mentioned earlier, where Estonia contributing the largest share. When unsatisfied demand is considered, as again mentioned before, the figure rises to 3.75 billion euro. That's something. Prices have remained generally moderate, although we recorded only 18 price incidents exceeding the threshold of 7,500 euros per megawatt hour, 18 in the whole year. That's again something. So good, I would say overall good for end consumers. Looking ahead, 2026 promise continued growth and additional TSOs join the platform, strengthening the cooperation and delivering even greater efficiency across Europe balancing markets. Before getting any further, are there any questions from those who are here physically? I see today in Brussels in ENTSO-E. Please go ahead, Oliver.
Yes, thank you. Ivan Kirkova, NG, representing Eurelectric. I just had a question with the strong growth of the volumes. Has that an impact on the possibility of exchanges of subsequent balancing platforms? So in this case, the PICASSO and the imbalance netting, because you are using every time the leftover capacity. Given this increase in volume, did it have an impact on the ability of the other platforms to exchange energy? And do you have any info on how often there was not ability to exchange due to congestion for the MARI platform?
Well, generally speaking, yes, because the capacities are used as they are time-wise. So should the capacity be used for exchange of mFRR? Nothing left, and there's need for exchange, then nothing left for following processes, aFRR or imbalance, I think. So that's that. On further details, I don't have it now. At Ulf do.
Maybe what you described can specifically in our situation occur at the Baltics, just due to the fact that they are in MARI and PICASSO at this point in time. While for the Iberian TSOs, Spain has already joined PICASSO, but not Portugal, not REN yet. So basically, there this situation does not occur. What we noted already from another comment, which we already have had in the Slidos, is that maybe for next year we share some analysis regarding the usage of the cross-zonal capacity, because it's again a bit the data aggregation question. You have seen this when we shared the prices this time, that we try to do it with box plots, because otherwise you usually get lost in the data if you go for it for second values for PICASSO, for instance. But maybe for next year.
But also perhaps to supplement here, if we go later on in the PICASSO operational results, where we then compare really the demand that is there, because that's what in PICASSO is displayed, one can see at least certain points there.
And also for, say, the promised visualization, it's if you're impatient, you can dig some data from Transparency Platform beforehand. You're always welcomed. And I would like just to say it's not a simple task, so don't expect miracles. We will do our best, but with the resources we have, which are not endless. All right. Are there any further questions from those physically here? I don't see, and time-wise, because the next in agenda, if I'm not mistaken, is the coffee break for those who are here present. Those who are online are welcome to make themselves coffee or tea or whatever they please them. And then we shall continue with PICASSO and IGCC. So what shall we go for the coffee break now, a bit earlier?
2 questions from the online.
Okay, or 1 or 2 questions. Yeah, we can address some of them. So Ulf, if you can take a lead on that, or give us a minute to organize ourselves.
Europe, this one, for instance.
Okay. Why countries in middle of Europe hasn't been requested and activated for mFRR? That's the proactive reactive TSO approach. And yeah, that's that. And also in case of Germany, also the amount of procured aFRR. aFRR is, well, easier to rely on if you have enough.
Maybe if we go for the question, which we also see in the chat, quite highly ranked, is there has the switch to the 15 minutes MTU had an impact on balancing? From our perspective, as it's only around about one month in the introduction, it's too early to judge this. We will for sure have a look at this as soon as more data is available. Maybe from a very hands-on assessment, we'll say it hasn't changed the entire world. Obviously, we are still here, and we are still doing balancing. But which is of course the underlying part of this question: has it improved the self-balancing of balancing groups? I think this and reduce the remaining imbalances. This is something which will only or can only be answered after we have some additional data at hand. Maybe the next one is there any expectation on having not only shared activation energy, but also available cross-border in the future? And I understand the question, availability across border in the future. I understand the question, shouldn't TSO, in a way that shouldn't TSO do not only do a joint activation, but also have some joint balancing capacity at hand. And indeed, balancing capacity cooperations is something that we are working on. And maybe it's a bit beyond the scope of this workshop. But if you want, check the ENTSO-E web page either for Cobra with C as one of the potential corporations, or alpaca with a C, which is another kind of cooperation, both working on this goal. Next question: could the high mFRR Iberian demand due to REE not remunerating FCR and aFRR still being not very liquid? It's maybe this is something to think about. My personal perception is that it's really difficult to derive from one market with very different parameters to the other markets. So maybe food for thought, but from a personal perspective, rather difficult to assess right now. With an eye on the time, should we answer the other? Just looking to. yeah, then maybe with an eye on the time, we will answer the other questions later on in written. But now break for the coffee, and please be back in 10 minutes.
So good morning, everyone. So we'll be starting again the workshop. So I'll pass to the PICASSO colleagues. So please.
Yes, so let's continue with the PICASSO and IGCC part. So for a quick overview of what we will touch on, so I will start with a project overview and the progress of the implementation. Then we will dive into the details of the business processes, and lastly we will try to show some metrics on the operational side of the platform. So if we jump to the next one. Yeah, so the PICASSO platform was initially started or the work on the platform was initially started in 2017, pursuant to the guideline balancing. And currently we have 26 TSOs from 23 countries who are participating in the project. Go live was in 22 when Jeps joined the platform, and then being alone on the platform means, of course, you cannot exchange anything with anyone. So first exchange happened on June 22nd when APG and the 4 German TSOs joined the platform. Then a little bit later, Italy and TERRE from Italy joined, and then quite some time after that, they suspended its operation in the platform, hence the a little bit special color in the map on the right side. Yeah, subsequently several TSOs joined during this year. ENTSO joined in February. In March, the Litgrid, APME, and Fingrid joined. April saw RTE, AST, and Elering joining. In June, RE and PSE joined the platform, and I think the next slide will show the remaining TSOs' expectation for joining. So please stay on the. So the platform, just very briefly, so I think Dominic will come into this, but PICASSO establishes a European domestic energy market for aFRR energy, so the same as MARI, but for aFRR instead. It fosters operational stability by coordinating and activating the aFRR across borders, exactly the same as MARI is doing. So the market time unit is 4 seconds. This means that the PICASSO optimizer is doing 7.8 million market clearings per year, like a word here I can see. And then lastly to note, so the same IT solution that is used in PICASSO is also being used for the IGCC, hence the combined presentation here. Next slide. Now going into the overview of the accession. So each member TSO fills out this accession roadmap twice a year. This is the latest one from 1st of October. So the platform is not responsible for what is put here, but is of course responsible for showing the expected future TSO joining. Yeah, be aware that changes might happen on a continuous basis as the local implementation projects gain new knowledge. What we see is that expectation is that Italy will actually try to rejoin the platform this month. Is that correct? And then we see an influx of TSOs beginning of next year. Yeah. Next slide. Yeah, so a short overview of IGCC. As we see, all TSOs are shown as operational member TSOs. So it's the first platform to actually achieve this milestone. This happened for all EU TSOs of Central Europe, and was done in 2025 when the Baltic TSOs joined the platform as well. In the beginning of the year, we changed the settlement to a 4-second cycle to harmonize with the PICASSO way of doing things. You see a historical evolution in the left corner. I will not go into details on this. Yeah.
Yeah. Then going to the business processes and to the kind of specialities of PICASSO and also the interaction with the IGCC. Yeah, first of all, I think this you've seen this picture now also in the umbrella slide, but I want to point it out also now for PICASSO and in the IGCC. As you see here, we have the more or less the same input that also the MARI platform and also TERRE has. So we get the offered bits by each TSO. We also get the transmission capacities and we get the demands, so more or less the imbalances. And here it's kind of important to mention that these transmission capacities we get here are the leftovers after the day ahead, the intraday, after TERRE and after MARI. So more or less the PICASSO IGCC platform receives these transmission capacities in the end of the process. So it's more or less the leftovers after all other timeframes and the other balancing platforms. As already said, this is done every 4 seconds. For the transmission capacities, this is not that relevant because they are usually updated every 15 minutes, but especially for the demand, it's very important. So we get more or less every 4 seconds another demand. That's why we also create or have to create every 4 seconds a new result of these processes. Then we give this to the AOF. The AOF is, there are more or less 2 AOFs working on the same IT solution. It's the PICASSO AOF and it's the IGCC AOF, or the imbalance netting AOF. We will show later on how they interact with each other. And the outcome are the selected bits. The selected bits are transferred as selected bits to each TSO, and each TSO then gives these selected bits into its controller and activates those bits based on the controller dynamics. We also calculate the cross-border marginal price based on the results of the selected bits, and we also get the flows. The flows are of particular interest for the settlement later on, because based on the flows the settlement is done. If we go to the next slide, then we can also zoom a little bit in this different things. And here I want to draw your attention especially to the middle part of this slide, because here it's shown that the interaction with the BSP itself is not, so the BSP has no role in interacting with the platform. It's always the TSO that interacts with the platform. So as well as MARI, TERRE and PICASSO, all those platforms are TSO systems that interact with the TSOs, and the communication to the BSP is done by each TSO individually. That's why we always talk about selected bits by the platform. So the platform can only select bits and send those selected bits to the TSO, and the TSO has to activate them. The overall model that is behind it is called control demand model. More or less based on the demand, we select bits, and the bits are then activated by the TSO, activated by the TSO, and then the BSP is physically activating them. That's a kind of important thing. So all the TSO BSP settlement is still the responsibility of the TSO. Then the algorithm itself, it contains, it's more or less the AOF, it's the CMOL merging, and then we have then our interactions with the different settlement functions, publication functions, and so on. Then if we go to the next slide, it's how the IGCC and the imbalance netting and the PICASSO act with each other. Why is this important and why is it that complicated? Let's say it complicated. The first thing is both of them have to be done in 4-second intervals. So more or less the MTU for the PICASSO and for the imbalance netting are the same MTU. And we are obliged to use the ATCs in a certain order. And this order is TERRE, MARI, then it's PICASSO, and then it's the IGCC. So we have to run first of all a PICASSO optimization, then the leftover of the ATCs after this PICASSO optimization are then given to the IGCC. That's what you see here. So the step 1 is the PICASSO step in green. Step 2 is in blue. That's the imbalance netting step. But after the imbalance netting step, there could be, or it's most likely that now the activation that we selected in the first step of bits is not optimal anymore. Because more or less with the netting, you have changed the situation again. That's why we need a third step where we rerun PICASSO and do the optimal activation of bits. And that's kind of important to understand that although it's 2 separate platforms, it's kind of difficult to run them really independently from each other because you have to exchange the information about the activations within the 4-second interval. So these 3 steps have to be done in 1 4-second interval. That's kind of important. So, and then that's why also the cross-border marginal price is then calculated after the 3rd step, because after the 3rd step we have the real activation principles. So if we go to the next slide, so that's the process itself, and then what is the difference between those 2 platforms? The imbalance netting, so the IGCC has the only aim to avoid aFRR activation, and we avoid aFRR activation by doing implicit netting. So we look if there is a TSO that has a positive demand, and we look if there are corresponding TSOs with a negative demand. If they are, and if there is enough cross-zonal capacity available in between, then more or less the demand is netted. So you see this here in this small example. There's a TSO with 50 megawatt of demand, and 2 TSOs with minus 60 and minus 40 demand. So if you sum it up, you see, okay, this 50 demand megawatt can be netted. We net them, and then we distribute the netting to the 2 remaining TSOs, here B and C, and because more or less we do a proportional netting, the TSO B then gets in the end only a demand of minus 30 that he has to serve, and the TSO C gets a demand of minus 20 that he has to serve. And the TSO A is more or less fully netted, so he don't have to activate anything. So that's what we do in the IGCC. And in PICASSO, we have the aim to minimize more or less the aFRR activation. First of all, this can also be done by netting. So also the PICASSO area performs in the beginning its own netting. So all the demand that is in the PICASSO area is also used for a first netting. But then afterwards, the common merit order list, so the CMOL kicks in, and then we also distribute the demand, the remaining demand after the initial netting by the PICASSO area to those TSO who have the cheapest bits more or less in the common merit order list. So that's why you see here in the example that we have here the same situation that we had before, but now with very cheap bits in the area A compared to area C. And what you see now is, although the area A has after netting 0 activation, now it activates minus 20 megawatt downward. That's the share of the TSO-C that is now transferred to the TSO-A, and more or less now TSO-A activates for TSO-C because there are the cheap bits. This results now, of course, to an additional flow between TSO-A and TSO-C because there's the demand is there located. And all of this is only done or can only be done if there are ATCs available, and then this whole system works like this. This results then also, if you can go to the next slide, to situations that are at the moment kind of they are explainable, but maybe in the first glance not that easy to understand, because at the moment the IGCC region is different than the PICASSO region. So there might always be situations where in PICASSO there is a certain result, and then the IGCC, so the netting via the IGCC, goes in the other direction than the PICASSO results. And if you see this, some TSO published this also on a high granularity, the differences between the IGCC flows and PICASSO flows. There might be situations where you have a positive PICASSO flow, because based on the bit structure, and a negative IGCC flow. This happens not often, and it will decline in the occurrence the more PICASSO TSOs we have, because then the difference between PICASSO and IGCC vanishes. But it's a normal situation. It can happen. It's based on the two algorithms that work together here. In the end, relevant also for the TSO settlement and also for the TSO activation is only the sum. So it will never end up in a situation that the controller gets a signal minus and a signal plus. The controller gets only one signal, and that's the sum of the IGCC and the PICASSO correction signal. So that's one hint, one thing where we also get sometimes question from market participants how this IGCC and PICASSO systems work together, and that's more or less the reason is the way how we have to treat the capacities here. Okay, if we go to the next slide, more or less that's what I already explained. The AOF is located before the different controllers, so it's not up to the AOF to activate BSPs, it's up to the controller of each TSO to activate the BSPs. The controller gets a kind of correction signal from the AOF, and he has to add this correction signal to his LFC input. Based on the LFC input, there's now a control target, let's call it like this, and the control target ends up then in a BSP activation, which is done more or less based on the local merit order list. And the local merit order list now brings this control target to each individual BSP, which has then more or less a control request. The BSP has to activate, and then in the end we get an activation signal back to the system that we more or less put into the controller, and then we have the closed loop. So kind of important to say, all of this works now in 4 seconds. So all of this has to be highly automated, and because otherwise we will not be able to do this. So that's the activation principle itself. And now based on this, we can also now jump to the pricing itself. That's on the next slide. PICASSO and works like also Mari and the other platforms based on a marginal pricing principle. So the highest bit that is activated sets the price. You can see this here in the merit order list. It's kind of easy for let's take one uncongested area of 2 or 3 LFC areas. They form together a CMOL, and you see the CMOL here in the upper right part. So more or less all bits are ranked in a certain order. Then we have the demand. Important here, the demand is now netted demand. So it's based on the PICASSO netting. It's also based on the IGCC netting. So in the end, there is a remaining demand in this uncongested area. And based on this demand, we now select the bit, and the highest bit that is selected sets now the price. This cross-border marginal price is also calculated by the PICASSO AOF, and based on this, we publish this. Kind of important to mention that we always have to derive a price, so there has to be always a cross-border marginal price, also in situations where nothing is activated. These situations occur quite often. It's the so-called full netting situation. In the full netting situation, more or less the demands of different areas match, and of one congested area, one uncongested area match, and that's why nothing has to be activated. And this is displayed in the PICASSO publications and also in the PICASSO cross-border marginal price by giving two values. So we give a cross-border marginal price in positive and in negative direction. This indicates then that we have a full netting situation. Now coming down to the one word that I used but have not yet explained, it's the uncongested area. Based on the implementation framework, the uncongested area is this area where the cross-border marginal price is the same. So it's the area where we have no congestion. No congestion means that no ATC is at its limits. So as I said, we get the ATC as an input parameter. Based on the flows we have calculated from the AOF, we can now determine if a area or if a border is congested. And if an area or border is congested, then we have to have a price difference between those two areas. And if there's no congestion between those areas, we don't have a price congestion, so we have the same price there. And now it's kind of important to point out here two things. First of all, the available capacities, as I already said, are the remainings after day ahead, after intraday, and after the other three, the other two platforms. And the second thing, a border can also be congested during the PICASSO optimization, in the situation where we exchange up to the maximum of this capacity. So even if we have available cross-zonal capacities, it could be after the optimization that we have two different cross-border marginal prices, because during the optimization, more or less we calculated a flow that is exactly the amount of available capacity. So whenever you see more or less two different prices in PICASSO, you know that the border between those areas is congested during this time. Good, then we come to the next slide. It's a kind of thing that was introduced in 2024, and in August 2024 there was the ACER decision 8 and the ACER decision 9 2024, where the calculation of the cross-border marginal price was adjusted. As I explained it until now, the cross-border marginal price is the result of the AOF and purely the AOF. And with this decision 8 and decision 9, there was an introduction that not only the PICASSO output sets the price, but also the controller outputs. So more or less what we did with this decision is to bring the cross-border marginal price more to the physical reality than we had before. Why is it like this? Because now we also take the dynamic of the controller into account when we calculate the cross-border marginal price. We already presented this in the last year, because there it was more or less the newest thing. In the end, it looks like this, that we have the cross-border marginal price calculated by the AOF, so without the controller dynamics, and we have the cross-border marginal price calculated by the controllers, or using the controller dynamics, and we look what is the minimum, and we take this minimum, and the minimum is then in the end the cross-border marginal price. We also have some figures on the, if you just go on the next slide, then you can also see the impact of this change. It's a little bit, we focus here on 2 months. It's August and September 2024. Why do we focus on this 2 months? Because that was the 2 months after the implementation of this decision and before the accession of the next TSO. So more or less that's the period where we can, without any influence, really compare this change. And we look here at the so-called price incidents. So the price incidents are situations where the cross-border marginal price is above 7,500 euros or below minus 7,500 euros in negative direction. And what you can see here in these figures that with this change, the numbers of this price incident was reduced significantly. And the main part or the main story behind this is that most of those price incidents that we get rid of with the new situation were very short price incidents. So they were just based on the AOF result, but never really activated in reality, because after the AOF result, there's still the controller dynamic. And by taking into account the controller dynamic, more or less this number of price incident was reduced. So that's why this slide here is focusing only on the price incident, but that's also true if you look at the overall volume of the cross-border marginal price. Also, the overall level of the cross-border marginal price is reduced, which is kind of obvious if you take the minimum between two values, and one value is the original value that you had. In the end, it should end up in a situation where the cross-border marginal price is reduced. Not only the number of price spikes, but also the overall level of the cross-border marginal price is reduced. It's kind of difficult to show this because more or less we only had 2 months to show it, because afterwards then we had the next sessions, and with the next sessions again the level of the cross-border marginal price has been changed. Good. Now I have a very awkward situation because I see that Mathieu Franzen has raised his hand, and I want to say that this is for me an awkward situation because I'm not sure if Mathieu Franzen can speak.
Can you hear me?
Mathieu, then you can speak.
Okay. Yes. Thank you. I was wondering the same. Maybe Dominic, thanks for the explanation. Just one question on the red arrow you have in the slide, going like taking the output and indeed the price. But that's maybe my question. My question is, maybe you can flip the slide one tick back, because you had the description of this local. This one. So the aFRR optimization, does it determine itself this combination of the local and the cross-border marginal price, or does each TSO have to do this locally?
This is done in the AOF itself.
Okay.
Because it's still it's still like this, that the AOF has to calculate the cross-border marginal price. So the cross-border marginal price is something that is determined centrally.
And if we have some more, that's more specific question, but if the frequency of the two is higher or lower, how does that affect the CBMP? So if there's a 4 second versus a 1 second price determination locally.
Yeah, that's we always take 4 seconds. So the AOF run is 4 seconds. That's why we always take more or less every 4 seconds we have more or less a new snapshot of data.
Okay.
What's changed in between is not relevant for the PICASSO optimization. It's also true for the demand, by the way. The demand also, there are some TSOs calculating demand every 1 second, but as the PICASSO optimization only runs every 4 seconds, we always take the situation every 4 seconds.
Okay, good. Okay. Thanks.
Thanks a lot. And maybe also this question also points to one other point that I want to mention here. So it's really done every 4 seconds. So it's kind of hard to predict how the demand will be evolved in the next 10 seconds. And it's even harder to predict how the demand of the whole PICASSO area, because we always have to take the demand of the whole PICASSO area, will develop in the next 5 minutes. So that's why, from my point of view, it's hard to predict how the system will behave in the next 10 minutes. And that's, maybe there was also a question about the operational challenges. I think that's also one operational challenge that the PICASSO system itself has, and the control centers are dealing with this quite good, that more or less every second, every next second, there could be a plant outage, there could be something that is then influencing the whole PICASSO optimization, because the demand is more or less giving unfiltered into the system. One very brave example or one very good example is the loss of load in Czechia that we faced this year. Czechia is more or less fully integrated in the whole platforms, where we saw that then also PICASSO and also Mari supplied a lot of energy towards Czechia, or took a lot of energy towards Czechia to more or less compensate this overall loss of load. Good. Then we go to the next slide. The next slide, it's again focusing on the different settlement processes we have, and I think that's also something quite important. There is a TSO settlement. That's more or less the settlement PICASSO is responsible for. In this TSO settlement, we take the cross-border marginal prices and we take the flows calculated by the AOF and do the settlement between the TSOs. And there is a TSO BSP settlement that is under the responsibility of each TSO. So it's a local process. And one input into this local process is the cross-border marginal price. But there's one other input, and that's the more or less accepted volume, so the activated volume by each BSP. That is also one input for this TSO BSP settlement. And the accepted volume is nothing really used in the AOF. We got the value there, or we got one value there. It's the aFRR that is activated, just for to display it, to monitor it, and you will also later see it in the operational results. But the settlement is not done by this in the PICASSO world. The PICASSO group itself just settles on the cross-border marginal flows, the cross-border marginal prices, and the flows determined by the AOF. Good. Then the concept of elastic demand. I think that's the last conceptual slides or conceptual principle that we have. It was also part of the decision 8 and decision 9 that was submitted by or that was decided by Acer in August last year. The TSO have the possibility, same as in Mari, to declare a part of their demand to elastic. Elastic means in this world that the demand has not to be settled on any costs. So an inelastic demand will always be fulfilled if it's on the one hand technical possible. So if there is enough capacity and enough transfer capacity, and then it's regardless of cost, this demand will be settled. And the elastic demand, there you can also submit a kind of price threshold. So the kind of indicator up to which costs you will be willing to more or less get your demand satisfied. There are certain rules about this amount. So one rule, and that's a very important rule for the aFRR process itself. The dimensioned need is always to be inelastic. So more or less the amount of aFRR you have procured and dimensioned, this has to be inelastic, because more or less you have procured this by, or you have dimensioned this by a reason. The reason is to maintain system security. That's why it would be kind of difficult to explain why this amount of demand is getting elastic. So more or less you can declare everything above your dimensioned need as elastic, and you can put based on your local agreed rules, and local agreed rules means locally a TSO with the NRA agreed rules. You set more or less the price threshold for this. At the moment, this concept of elastic demand is used by ELIA, so from Belgium. It's used in France, it's used in Austria, and it's used in Denmark. And in Denmark, it's used in Denmark, so in DK1, in Denmark that is synchronous to RGCE, but also in Denmark 2, that is the east part that is synchronized to the Nordics. So those TSO use at the moment this concept of elastic demand. If you want to get really into the details how this is done in the PICASSO algorithm, and if you are a mathematical nerd, then you're welcome to look at the public mathematical AOF description. It's available on the PICASSO homepage, so ENTSO-E/PICASSO on market platforms, blah, 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 PICASSO, and also on the ENTSO-E transparency platform where all the algorithms are available. To be honest, it's not that easy. No? So we are in a mathematical framework where we have to distinguish now between demands that are satisfied and not satisfied during a calculation where we don't know the exact cross-border marginal price, because the cross-border marginal price can only be calculated once you have all the results of the area. It's possible, so you can read it in the mathematical description how this is done. To go to the next slide, there's just how this is done or what results there. So here's a TSO that sets a price hold to its demand, and then more or less based on this, the demand is fulfilled up to a certain level, and if the price threshold is above this, or if the bid price is above this threshold, the demand is not fulfilled, so the bid remains there more or less unused. But on the next slide, you see also one other example that it doesn't prevent, or it doesn't. So the elastic demand price threshold is not a price cap. That's very important. So let's take the example of a TSO that has a price threshold of 1,000 euros, but he has a bid in its area that has the value of 2,000 euros per megawatt hour. For the TSO itself, this bid with the 2,000 euro will not be used because more or less he has its elastic demand and so on, so this will not be used. But there might be a situation that another TSO without elastic demand, or with elastic demand with a higher threshold than 2,000 euros needs this bid, and then he can also activate this bid. And if he does this and there is no congestion in between, we are back to our principles that the cross-border marginal price in an uncongested area has been the same, and the cross-border marginal price has to be the bid that the highest bid that is activated in the CMOL. And in this situation, this will also result that the cross-border marginal price valid for TSO-A is above this 1,000 euro threshold, because more or less this 2,000 euro bid was activated for another TSO, from another TSO. Of course, this will result in a settlement. No, of course, in the TSO settlement, this is reflected because this bid that is activated for TSO-B in this situation results in a flow, in a cash flow from TSO-B to TSO-A, because he pays for this. But in principle, the cross-border marginal price is in both areas the same. That's kind of important to know in the functioning of the elastic demand. The elastic demand doesn't serve as a price cap. It just a kind of I don't want to pay unlimited money for the demand. And then perhaps some figures. We don't have them presented or as kind of thing, but just to mention this, that the elastic demand is really used, so actively used, is and also active is kind of seldom. So it's below 1% of the time that this is used. But if you also look at the cross-border marginal prices, and if you compare the cross-border marginal prices with the 7,500, you see throughout the year with more TSOs using the elastic demand, that especially those short price caps are a little bit vanishing, and they are already then vanishing when the TSO is in isolated mode. So the elastic demand has an impact also on the cross-border marginal price, but it's not like a situation that we have in 20 or 30% of the time this elastic demand really active. Okay, then I think we wrap up with the operational results, and there we have not that much figures than we had in Mari, because we wanted to try to wanted to focus on these operational concepts that created a lot of questions during the year. What you see here is the usage of PICASSO. And you see here blue bars, and the blue bars are kind of high. The blue bars are the demand. So that's the demand from a TSO that is brought towards the PICASSO platform. And let's take an example. Let's take here the example of Germany. It's the last group of bars here. So the demand of Germany is in the range of 300 gigawatt hours for it's the period from August to September. It doesn't matter. It's always the same. So we have a demand of around 300 gigawatt hours that is brought to PICASSO and the IGCC, and then the end this results in an activation of around 80 gigawatts. So the German TSOs are using PICASSO, and they are using the IGCC. They are using it in a very high manner, but due to the netting, due to the effects of the CMOL, it doesn't result in a very high activation of aFRR in Germany, because due to the netting, it results in a reduced activation within Germany. And that's true for every country. So you see here, in every country, the demand is the highest compared then to the outputs. And that's the effect of the netting. Another effect that you can see here is that the green bars are a little bit, in one area they are a little bit higher, and in the other areas they are a little bit lower. For example, if in positive direction, this is an indicator for a TSO that has, let's call it like this, beneficial bits in the CMOL in positive direction here, because it gets more or less a lot of activation from the other TSOs. And now coming back to the ATCs, from my point of view with this graph, you can also see a little bit how the ATCs influence the operation. If you look at France, in normal operation, France is an exporting country. You see this in the day-ahead prices, that most of the time, especially in August and September, you see a kind of price difference between all the other countries and France. So France is an export country that is exporting towards more or less its maximum. So the ATCs left after the day-ahead market and then after the intraday market are kind of low for a vasting exporting country. And if you are an export country and then you have a negative demand, more or less where you say, okay, I have negative demands, mean you have a surplus of energy and you want to get rid of the energy. But if you are an exporting country, your ATCs are limited in the exporting direction. So the potential for France in these situations to net are limited. And that's exactly what you can see here in the RTE graph. So for negative demand, you see nearly no corrected values. But for positive demand, which is more or less in the same direction, you see a lot of corrected values. And that's exactly this effect of the leftover capacities. So if you are an exporting country, you have a lot of remaining capacities to import. That's what you see in the upper part, and have less export capacity. That's something you see in the lower part. For Germany, for example, it's different, because also for Germany, it's not really clear, is Germany an importing country or an exporting country? Most of the time we are an importing country, but not to the very last extent of the ATCs. And that's why more or less this is here kind of equally distributed. Good. Then to sum it up, we can also have a look at the economic surplus. Again, this economic surplus is calculated exactly the same as it was described for Mari and also for TERRE. So we simulate the decoupled scenario and then we compare it with each other. And what you can see here is the typical effect of growing platforms. We saw this in the IGCC, we saw this in Mari, we also see this in PICASSO. The more TSO join, the bigger the CMOL becomes, the bigger the economic surplus gets. Not only in total, but also for all other TSOs. So you more or less, you see this for all other TSOs, that with additional TSOs, you see an increase of the different values, and here especially the economic surplus. So from January until September, it's not July as it was presented in the umbrella it's around 350 million euros. If we also put this additional satisfaction of demand in, we also end up in billions, but it's just a fictive or a virtual price. Also, this is a virtual saving, more or less. We didn't have the decoupled mode, but I think it's a kind of impressive number, also showing the benefit of those situations and those things here. Yeah. So that's it from our reporting. If any questions in the room, please feel free to ask. No, then maybe we can take, or I will hand over. That's just a backup.
Maybe then we go for the questions in the Slido. Thanks a lot for the presentation. And I suggest in the remaining round about 7 minutes, we go for the PICASSO slides questions first. Keep in mind, no questions will be lost. We will answer later on in written anyhow. So first question, and maybe already partially answered, but let's go for it anyhow. Why is PICASSO causing price spikes in balancing prices, and what solutions are being considered to resolve such extreme events?
Yeah, maybe I can try to answer. So PICASSO will solve each MTU with the bits at hand. So if a price, so this is a subjective matter, I think. So I'm unsure what the astronomic price spikes when something becomes astronomic, but I understand the question. So if that happens, that is due to either a large demand or a shortage of bits, leading to utilization of the end of the bit curve, which of course will deem high prices as a return. So of course we are looking into how to lower the price in general terms. This is I think a general TSO obligation to try to secure liquidity in the market, but a high price doesn't necessarily correspond to a failure in the platform or the solution in the platform, I think. Yeah. Then maybe.
Can I add something?
Yes, sure, David.
Yeah, David, just to add something on this. So we observed over the past years this kind of issues with high prices, and we established high price mitigation measures, starting with a price cap, which will be changed next year to a price cap which can evolve. So currently it's fixed at 15K. From starting in summer next year, it can also increase based on high prices, which happen in the platforms or also across the platforms. And we established an alternative price calculation on PICASSO level, also taking into account the activation requests. And we established the price elastic aFRR demand. So I think this is important to mention here. If there are still high prices, we need to start another discussion, but we TSOs are convinced that these measures which we established and consulted with all of your stakeholders are currently sufficient to cover the main issues which we observed in the past. So the price levels decreased since then, and I think Dominic also elaborated on this, let's say, different measures already before in the slide. So if you want to take a look into the background, it's there.
Maybe then I just introduce the next question, and I'm quite sure that Dominic is keen to provide some update regarding the so-called PICASSO IT issue. Please share views on the communication or lack of communication on October the 23rd, effects on the intraday trading, and this is maybe it's more an assessment here already, the post-incident price correction across all eras.
So first of all, to make this quite clear, and it is on the 23rd of January of October, we didn't had any PICASSO IT issue. The platform functioned completely correctly. That's kind of very important because there are also articles more or less blaming this. It's not a PICASSO IT issue. If you look at the communication platform of the German TSOs, there, from my point of view, it's in a sufficient way explained what happened. It was an IT bug on the German procurement system, leading to the situation that bids with a high positive price in negative direction were submitted to the PICASSO platform. A price of 15,000 euro in negative direction is a price that is completely in line with the standard product. The standard product of aFRR ranges from plus 15,000 to minus 15,000. That's why those bids were included in the CMOL and then also used in the PICASSO optimization, because that's exactly the way how the PICASSO optimization function. If there is a bid with a high price in positive direction, it's a beneficial bid for the PICASSO area. That's why it's ranked in the beginning of the CMOL. That's why it was activated. Also, the cross-border marginal price is then calculated by these situations. So to talk here about a PICASSO IT issue is completely wrong. Lack of communication, I'm not sure if there is a lack of communication. If you look at the German website, regelleistung.net, there was a communication. There was a communication to the German BSPs. So this more or less is done. At the moment, as the German TSOs, but also the PICASSO group itself, looks into this. We are also evaluating what we can do, what we cannot do. And so that's then also maybe the answer to number two. We are at the moment looking into this, and we are at the moment assessing what we can do and what we cannot do.
Okay, thanks. Maybe we go for one last question. What is the main difference between IGCC and PICASSO?
Sorry, I think I explained this. The main difference is IGCC can only net volumes, and the PICASSO can also activate additional volumes across different countries.
Yeah, then one last question before we run out of time. There is a question on the reason that Italy has still not joined PICASSO. So this is, of course, a national matter. I think TANA will need to clarify this. I will say that the accession roadmap that I showed earlier, actually in the bottom, it has notes. And the note for TANA specifically is that they needed to update the terms and conditions in order to rejoin PICASSO. So this is, as I understand it, this is the reason for TANA not having joined yet. This is done, and this is why they will rejoin the platform expected this month.
Okay, thanks a lot. I think we have reached the end of our time for now, and we thank everybody for your contributions, for joining us today. Remaining answers again will be answered in written, and yeah, thank you for being with us today. We now go for the lunch break and continue not with the stakeholder workshop itself, but with the regular EBSG in the afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you.